Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 236th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when he reached the city, the shades of evening closed around him, and the gates were shut. Now, by the decrees of fate and man's lot, this was the very city wherein he had been a prisoner, and to whose king his brother Amjad was minister. When As'ad saw the gate was locked, and he turned back and made for the burial ground, where, finding a tomb without a door, he entered there and lay down and fell asleep, and his face covered by his long sleeve. Meanwhile, Queen Marjana, coming up from Bahram's ship, questioned him of As'ad, now the Magian. When Queen Marjana overtook him with her ships, baffled her by his artifice and gramarye, swearing to her that he was not with him and that he knew nothing of him. She searched the ship, but found no trace of her friend. So she took Bahram and carried him back to her castle, and would have put him to death, but he ransomed himself from her with all his goods and his ships, and she released him and his men. They went forth from her, hardly believing in their deliverance, and fared on 10 days' journey till they came to their own city, and found the gate shut, it being eventide. So they made for the burial ground, thinking to lie the night there, and going round about the tombs, as fate and fortune would have it, saw the building wherein As'ad lay wide open, whereat Bahram marvelled and said, I must look into the sepulchre. Then he entered, and he found As'ad lying in a corner fast asleep, with his head covered by his sleeve. So he raised his head, and looking at his face, knewing him for the man on whose account he had lost his goods and his ship, and he cried, What, art thou alive? Then he bound him, and gagged him without further parley, and carried him to his house, where he clapped heavy shackles on his feet, and lowered him into the underground dungeons aforesaid, prepared for the tormenting of Moslems. And he bade his daughter by the name of Bostan to torture him night and day till the next year, when they would again visit the mountain of the fire, and there offer him up a sacrifice. Then he beat him grievously, and locked the dungeon door upon him, and then gave the keys to his daughter. By and by Bostan opened the door, and she went down to beat him, but finding him a comely youth, and a sweet face, with arched brows and eyes black with nature's coal, she fell in love with him, and she asked him, What is thy name? My name is As'ad, answered he. Whereat she cried, Mayst thou indeed be happy as thy name, and happy by thy days. Thou deservest not torture and blows, and I see that thou hast been injuriously entreated. And she comforted him with kind words, and loosed his bonds. Then she questioned him of the religion of al-Islam, and he told her that it was the true and right faith, and that our Lord Muhammad had approved himself by surpassing miracles and signs manifest, and that fire worship is harmful and not profitable. And he went on to expound to her the tenets of al-Islam till she was persuaded, and the love of the true faith entered her heart. Then, as Almighty Allah had mixed up with her being a fond affection of As'ad, she pronounced the two testimonies of the faith, and became of the people of felicity. After this she brought him meat and drink, and they talked with him, and they prayed together. Moreover, she made him chicken stews, and fed him therewith till he regained strength, and his sickness left him, and he was restored to his former health. Such things befell him with the daughter of Bahram the Magian. And so it happened that one day she left him, and stood at the house door, when, behold, she heard the crier crying aloud, and saying, Whoso hath him with him this handsome young man, whose favour is such and such, and bringeth him forth, shall have all he seeketh of money. But if he have him, and deny it, he shall be hanged over his own door, and his property shall be plundered, and his blood go for naught. Now As'ad had acquainted Bostan bint Bahram with his whole history. So when she heard the crier, she knew that it was he who was sought for, and going down to him, told him the news. Then he fared forth and made for the mansion of the wazir, whom when As'ad saw, he exclaimed, By Allah, this minister is my brother As'ad. And when he saw him, he exclaimed, Oh, this is marvellous. Then he went up to and the damsel walking behind him to the palace, where he again saw his brother, and threw himself upon him. Whereupon Amjad also knew him, and fell upon his neck, and they embraced each other, whilst the Wazir's Mamelukes dismounted and stood round them. They lay a while insensible, and when they came to themselves, Amjad took his brother and carried him to the Sultan, to whom he related the story, and the Sultan charged him to plunder Bahram's house. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 237th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Sultan ordered Amjad to plunder Bahram's house and to hang its owner. So Amjad dispatched thither for the purpose a company of men who sacked the house and took Bahram and brought his daughter to the Wazir, by whom she was received with all honor. For Asad had told his brother the torments he had suffered and the kindness she had done him. Thereupon Amjad related in his turn to Asad all that had passed between himself and the damsel, and how he had escaped hanging and had become Wazir, and they made moan each to the other of the anguish they had suffered for separation. Then the Sultan summoned Bahram and bade strike off his head, but he said, O most mighty king, art thou indeed resolved to put me to death? Replied the king, Yes, except thou save thyself by becoming a Moslem. Quoth Bahram, O king, bear with me a little while. Then he bowed his head groundwards, and presently raising it again, made profession of the faith, and Islamed at the hands of the Sultan. They all rejoiced at his conversion, and Amjad and Asad told him all that had befallen them, whereat he wondered and said, O my lords, make ready for the journey, and I will depart with you and carry you back to your father's court in a ship. At this they rejoiced and wept with sore weeping. But he said, O my lords, weep not for your departure, for it shall reunite you with those you love, even as were Ni'amah and Naomi. And what befell Ni'amah and Naomi? Asked they. They tell, replied Bahram, but Allah alone is all-knowing, the following tale of Ni'amah bin al-Rabi'a and Naomi, his slave girl. There lived once in the city of Kufa a man named al-Rabi'a bin Hatim, who was one of the chief men of the town, a wealthy and a healthy, and heaven had vouchsafed him a son, whom he named Ni'amah Allah. One day, being in the slave broker's mart, he saw a woman exposed for sale with a little maid of wonderful beauty and grace on her arm. So he beckoned to the broker and asked him, How much for this woman and her daughter? He answered, 50 dinars. Quoth al-Rabi'a, Write the contract of sale and take the money and give it to her owner. Then he gave the broker the price and his brokerage, and taking the woman and her child, carried them to his house. Now when the daughter of his uncle, who was his wife, saw the slave, she said to her husband, O my cousin, what is this damsel? He replied, Of a truth, I bought her for the sake of the little one on her arm. For know that when she groweth up, there will be no one like her for beauty, either in the land of the Arabs or the Asians. His wife remarked, Right was thy rede, and said to the woman, What is thy name? She replied, O my lady, my name is Tawfik. And what is thy daughter's name? Asked she. Answered the slave, Sa'ad, the happy. Rejoined her mistress, Thou sayest sooth, thou art indeed happy, and happy is he who hath bought thee. Then quoth she to her husband, O my cousin, what wilt thou call her? And quoth he, Whatsoever thou choosest. So she says, Then let us call her Naomi. And he rejoined, Good is thy device. The little Naomi was reared with al-Rabi'a's son, Ni'amat, in one cradle, so to speak, till the twain reached the age of 10, and each grew handsomer than the other. And the boy used to address her, O my sister, and she would say, O my brother, till they came to that age when al-Rabi'a said to Ni'amah, O my son, Naomi is not thy sister, but thy slave. I bought her in thy name whilst thou wast in the cradle, so call her no more sister from this day forth. Quoth Ni'amah, If that be so, then I will take her to wife. Then he went to his mother and told her of this, and she said to him, O my son, she is thy handmaid. So he wedded and went in unto Naomi and loved her. And 2 years passed over them whilst in this condition, nor was there in all Cufa a fairer girl than Naomi, or a sweeter or more graceful. As she grew up she learnt the Koran, and read works of science, and excelled in music and playing upon all kinds of instruments, and in the beauty of her singing she surpassed all the folk of her time. Now one day she sat with her husband in the wine chamber. She took the lute, tightening the strings, and sang these two couplets. While thou art my lord, whose bounty's my estate, a sword whereby my woes to annihilate, recourse I never need to Amru or Zad, nor aught save thee, if thou to grow straight. Nehemiah was charmed with these voices, and he said to her, By my life, O Naomi, sing to us with the tambourine and other instruments. So she sang these couplets in a lively measure. By his life, who holds my guiding rein, I swear I'll meet on love ground, parlous full, no care. Good sooth, I'll vex revellers thee obey, and quit my slumbers and all joy forswear. And for thy love I'll dig in vitals mine, a grave, nor shall my vitals weet 'tis there. And Nehemiah exclaimed, Heaven favor art thou, O Naomi. But whilst they led thus the most joyous life, behold, al-Hajjah, the viceroy of Cufa, said to himself, Needs I must contrive to take that girl named Naomi, and send her to the commander of the faithful, Abd al-Malik bin Marwan, for he hath not in his palace heard the like for beauty and sweet singing. So he summoned the old woman of the duennas of his wives, and said to her, Go to the house of al-Rabi'a, and foregather with the girl Naomi, and combine means to carry her off, for her like is not to be found on the face of the earth. She promised to do her bidding. So the next morning she donned the woolen clothes of a devotee, and hung around her neck a rosary of beads by the thousand, and handing in hand a staff, and a leather water bottle of Yamani manufacture. She began her journey. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 238th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the old woman promised to do the bidding of al-Hajjah, and whenas it was morning, she donned the woolen clothes of a devotee, and hung around her neck a rosary of beads by the thousand, and hand in hand a staff, and a leather water bottle of Yamani manufacture, and fared forth crying, Glory be to Allah, praise be Allah, there is no God but thee, God. Allah is the most great. There is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah the glorious, the great. Nor did she leave off her laws and her groaning in prayer, whilst her heart was full of guile and wiles, till she came to the house of Nehemiah bin al-Rabi'a at the hour of noon prayer, and knocked at the door. The doorkeeper opened and said to her, What dost thou want? Quoth she, I am a poor pious woman, whom the time of noon prayer hath overtaken, and lief would I pray in this blessed place. Answered the porter, O old woman, this is no mosque nor oratory, but the house of Nehemiah, son of al-Rabi'a. She replied, I know there is neither cathedral, mosque, nor oratory like the house of Nehemiah bin al-Rabi'a. I am a chamberwoman of the palace of the Prince of True Believers, and am come out for worship and the visitation of holy places. But the porter rejoined, Thou canst not enter. And many words passed between them, till at last she caught hold and hung to him, saying, Shall the like of me be denied admission to the house of Nehemiah bin al-Rabi'a, I who have free access to the houses of the emirs and grandees? Anon out came Nehemiah, and heard their loud language, laughed, and bade the old woman enter after him. So she followed him into the presence of Naomi, who she saluted after the goodliest fashion. And when she looked on her, she was confounded at her exceeding seemlihead, and said to her, O my lady, I commend thee to the safeguard of Allah, who made thee, and thy Lord fellows in beauty and loveliness. Then she stood up in the prayer niche, and betook herself to the inclination and prostration and prayer, till day departed and night darkened and straitened. When Naomi said to her, O my mother, rest thy legs and feet awhile. Replied the old woman, O my lady, Whoso seeketh the world to come, let him weary him in this world. And whoso wearieth not himself in this world shall not attain the dwellings of the just in the world to come. Then Naomi brought her food and said to her, Eat of my bread, and pray heaven to accept my penitence, to have mercy on me. But she said, O my lady, I am fasting. As for thee, thou art but a girl, and it besetteth thee to eat and drink and make merry. Allah be indulgent to thee, for the Almighty saith, All shall be punished except him who shall repent and believe and shall work a righteous work. So Naomi continued sitting with the old woman in talk, and presently said to Naamah, O my lord, conjure this ancient dame to sojourn with us a while, for pity and devotion are imprinted on her countenance. Quoth he, Set apart for her a chamber where she may say her prayers, and suffer no one to go into her. Peradventure Allah, extolled and exalted be he, shall prosper us by the blessings of her presence, and never separate us. So the old woman passed her night in prayer and reciting the Koran, and when Allah caused the morning to dawn, she went in to Naamah and Naomi, and giving them good morning, said to them, I pray Allah have you in his holy keeping. Quoth Naomi, Whither away, O my mother? My Lord hath bidden me set apart for thee a chamber where thou mayest seclude thee for thy devotions. Replied the old woman, Allah give him long life, and continue his favor to you both. But I would have you charge the doorkeeper not to stay my coming in to you, and inshallah, I will go through the rounds of the holy places, and pray for you two at the end of my devotions every day and night. Then she went out, whilst Naomi wept for parting with her, knowing not the cause of her coming, and returned to al-Hajjaj, who said to her, An thou do my bidding soon, thou shalt have of me abundant good. Quoth she, I ask of thee a full month. And quoth he, Take the month. Thereupon the old hag fell to daily visiting Naamah's house, and frequented his slave wife Naomi. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, until it be morrow.